I recently watched the 2015 film Sicario and it was really good. I created a Word file and written the storyboard and my interpretation of the story in hopes that it could be fun to listen to while wash dishes and whatnot. Anyways, the director is Denis Villeneuve and I've always had a hard time pronouncing his name. His name is spelled Denis, Denis, but since he's from Canada, he wants us to pronounce it the French way, Denis. He is one of the best directors currently out there and his movies rarely miss. The screenwriter is Taylor Sheridan. He is more famous for creating the TV series Yellowstone, which is everywhere on YouTube Shorts and TikTok. And the cinematographer is none other than Roger Deakins himself. Now, I don't need to introduce him. His name basically introduces himself, but he is known for visualizing films like No Country for Old Men and The Shawshank Redemption. Just by the list of creators, you can be like, oh, of course this movie is going to be a success. I mean, look at the crew. You got Denis, Roger Deakins, Benicio del Toro, Emily Blunt, and Thanos. I mean, the list is packed, but you also gotta remember that this was before Denis' major hit movies like Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, and the first two Dune movies, and Sicario was actually Taylor Sheridan's first screenwriting debut, so at the time, the film was held a major risk. Anyways, to the actual film. The setting is the US-Mexico border region down in Arizona at current time, which was at 2015. But what was going on in 2015 at the border? Well, in 2006, Mexico's government launched a large-scale militarized campaign against cartels, which led to street prices of drugs to climb to compensate for seizures, prison time, and the constant chance of a shipment disappears. The risk premium turned drugs into a more lucrative business, which rewards groups willing to use force to protect routes, intimidate rivals, and corrupt officials. So cartels rationally militarize, upgrading from small-time smugglers into armed territorial organizations. And because demand of stayed stubborn while profits rise, the crackdown keeps selecting the most violent, adaptive players, meaning the success of the military campaign, big bust, kingpin downs, often just reshuffle the market, while overdose death, trafficking, instability kept surging. So the war on drugs looked busy and still failed on its own terms. This idea of militarized campaign against cartels led to the militarization of the cartels itself is actually presented pretty clearly by the end of the film, where drug lord Fausto, played by Julio Cesar Cardillo, said to Alejandro, "Do you think the peoples that sent you here are any different? Who do you think we learned it from?" But more on that later. Before the movie even starts, the first thing that we see is the following sentences. The word Sicario comes from the zealots of Jerusalem, killers who hunted Romans who invaded their homeland. In Mexico, Sicario means hitman. Why did they make us read this before the whole show? Well, I think the director Denis did that because the movie is about who the Sicario is, or what the definition of hitman is. In the first half of the show, we are shown to believe that Sicario is meant for the drug cartels that kill and destroy those who oppose them, like people of Juarez or agents of FBI. Then, halfway through the movie, we start to realize the word Sicario probably best fits not the drug cartels, but those who hunt them, the CIA agents and the people who have a personal vendetta against the drug lords. So why did they start by defining Sicario? It's because the movie is about exploring the definition of hitman and showing moral ambiguity of us, the viewers, who rooted for the supposedly good guys doing bad stuff. This idea is best hinted in the first frame of the movie. Movie starts in Chandler, Arizona, and we see FBI agents invading a building owned by Manuel Diaz, a suspected cartel safe house. From this point of view, Sicario is not the drug cartel, but the FBI agents hunting them down. Here we see Kate, our protagonist of the movie. Kate is a kidnap and recovery specialist. Her work centers on getting people back, and that's important because the film opens under the clean moral banner of rescue. A call comes in, Kate mobilizes with her team and roll out the suspected safe house to find live hostages. On paper, it's American operation on American soil. Aside from the Kool-Aid-esque entry, the search feels routine, textbook clearing, room to room. Kate's team worries about taking fire, and they also fear what they might find. Then the shooting starts. Kate moves clear another room, and a man who's been hiding unloads a shotgun. The blast turns into a wall. The important thing is what that blast creates. That hole in the wall becomes an opening, like an accidental doorway into the real film. By the end of the film, Alejandro tells Kate that the border region has now become the land of the wolves, and that's exactly where the hole in the wall leads to. A land where paperwork, procedure, tactics, and mission don't hold a candle. A world that does not care about the rules she lives by. They start pulling the wall apart. Behind the wall are dozens of bodies, unidentified, stacked, crammed into the architecture itself. The count lands at least 35. Hiding corpses like this is like leaving something behind for whomever that comes next. An exhibit, a reminder that the cartels control the room you stand in, the walls you trust, the definition you carry into the building. As the search continues, an explosive detonates outside, an improvised explosion device, an IED. 2 officers die instantly. That detail is actually an important escalation. An IED is a battlefield tactic, a war term. It is a vocabulary of insurgency, of occupancy, of place where the idea of civil order already collapsed. The moment it goes off, the story moves into a war zone reality wearing the costume of suburbia. So when Kate looks shaken, she isn't reacting only to the possibility of dying. She's reacting to the realization that what she stepped into won't end inside the boundaries she understands. Kate and Reggie gets called back to the FBI office. They walk into the sterile conference room with clean air and clean lines, an environment designed to reassure you that the world is still organized. Interestingly, the room holds a figure who doesn't belong in it. Most of the people in the room are buttoned up, suits, polished shoes, colors aligned. Matt, however, sits there in a t-shirt under an open shirt, shorts, and a flip-flop. In a governmental room, that outfit reads as a power signal. That level of disrespect for the settings exists in someone unhinged or someone untouchable. He is so comfortable ignoring the rules that you understand the rules don't apply to him. He represents a set of rules that outrank everyone else. Kate feels uncomfortable, and that discomfort matters. She's a person built out of structure. She's the kind of agent who believes in professionalism and procedure means something. When she sees someone sitting inside her world while openly mocking its standards, it reads as a warning flare. Film's first major question lands here. Who in the room has control? Matt's bare feet tell you the answer before he even opens his mouth. Matt runs the files. Reggie has a law degree and about a year and 8 months on the job, the kind of rookie who's sharp and verbal. Kate has more field time and reads closer to a veteran. Matt's attention settles on Kate. He frames it as needing an experienced agent, but the decision has a more practical motive. Reggie is built to ask questions on record. He is the guy who will demand warrants, spell out jurisdiction, and saying this is unlawful until someone either explains themselves or shuts down the operation altogether. Matt is preparing to do something that cannot survive that kind of scrutiny, so Kate is an easier fit. Kate is a procedural person, and that unfortunately makes her more successful. If you wrap something in an appearance of legitimacy, she will follow it in good faith, and Matt can create that appearance. Matt pulls Kate aside and sells her on the special investigative team. He talks about payback for what had happened, finding the people responsible, delivering consequences, the country putting a group together and needing her in it. Pitch is clean, even righteous. What bothers Kate is the delivery. FBI work normally moves through a chain of command, not through a barefoot stranger in a meeting room asking you to volunteer. After the bodies in the wall and the IED, the idea of a larger force has to intervene is hard to resist. Kate is the type most vulnerable to that kind of pull. She is driven by justice, and she can't look at victims and walk away. She says, do we get an opportunity to get the men responsible for today? And Matt says, the men who are really responsible for today. So she signs on. They move to Luke Air Force Base and board a dedicated aircraft. For a brief 20 seconds, the story's texture shifts into something almost romantic in a way. The moment she meets Alejandro beneath the plane, we get to see Alejandro's profile, but we don't get to see his face. Kate curiously looks to see his eyes, but Alejandro dodges an eye contact. I thought that was pretty oddly placed, a sweet moment in the film. Inside the plane, Alejandro reads as trained and disciplined, but he doesn't present like anyone Kate can categorize. Kate thinks the destination is El Paso, US ground, jurisdiction, procedure. Then Alejandro asks casually, first time in Juarez? Kate locks up. That single question tells her the truth. The team never intended to give precise information. Matt can argue he didn't technically lie. El Paso, after all, and Juarez are sit across the border from one another, and they do land in El Paso to stage, but it's wordplay designed to keep Kate compliant. In the legal world Kate operates in, crossing into Juarez changes everything. Jurisdiction changes, accountability changes, justification changes, and the shift isn't minor, it's total. Kate starts pressing Matt. Why is she sitting there without a full picture? Why does Alejandro, who looks like an outsider, Alejandro says that he's previously from Colombia, carry influence? Her questions come from correct instincts that this is going to run outside the law. Matt's reply is flat. If you don't want to go, stay behind. And that's the declaration that the machine moves either way. Kate goes anyway because staying behind would mean that she's never seen the truth. She follows for the knowledge alone. From here on, she stops functioning purely as an investigator and starts functioning as an audience's eye. The film commits to her viewpoint right here. The convoy mission begins. The objective is to extract Guillermo, a cartel figure being held at Mexican courthouse. They keep calling it an escort, not an arrest. Even that wording carries warning. Pulling a man out of Mexico and bringing him into the US sits a gray zone by design. On the drive to Juarez, the film lingers on the city until it feels like a living presence. One lane runs nearly empty. The opposite lane, the lane heading to the United States, is jammed into a crawled standpoint. People want out and the exit is clogged. The imagery paints Juarez as a place that people cannot escape. Bodies hanging from an overpass, with missing women flyers, gunshots in the distance. It's groundwork for what Kate is about to understand. In this place, law exists as merely a decoration. They secure Guillermo at the courthouse and push back toward the border. Then the checkpoint traffic sequence arrives. This scene, people remember it because it captured the exact second a set of rules stopped meaning anything. The team has been given rules to engagement. They are told to wait to move. Two vehicles that feel cartel adjacent edge closer, and the tension compresses into a tiny detail, like eyes, hands, or door handles. Micro movement that decide who lives. No preemptive strikes turn out to be thinner than a sound. Legal framing stays in a place as self-defense, but the posture is one of execution. Kate is rattled by that because her world is built around arrest and prosecution. Here, the goal is resolution is on the asphalt. After the convoy, the film pivots into a quieter kind of disgust, a sequence that plays less like an action beat, but more like watching something unacceptable run smoothly in plain sight. Guillermo is transferred into U.S. military facility. Interrogation room is prepped. CIA officer Steve appears first, offering Guillermo water like this is a routine admin work. Everyone around them stays calm. Guillermo is a prisoner, yet the room carries the energy of an ordinary business. The moment Alejandro walks in the interrogation room carrying a white water jug, the film makes a very deliberate choice. It refused to show torture in the conventional sense. First, the camera that has been recording the interrogation is switched off. The operator steps out. The message is unmistakable. From here on, we enter a domain that must not exist on the record. In Kate's FBI universe, documentation is the first step. Reports, evidence logs, and chain of customs. But somehow here, the first procedural move is to sever the record. It's a scene where the director weaponizes the audience's imagination. If brutality is shown graphically, viewers can compartmentalize it, consume it at a distance. But when the frame is withheld, the mind is filled with the worst possible version. From there, Matt's trajectory becomes even more overt. He's a man operating above stature. He simply pulls Mexican migrants out of ICE pipeline. Off the book at will. Kate keeps asking the question you're supposed to ask. What are you doing? What are your authority coming from? But Matt doesn't explain. And the refusal to explain is the point. Explanation implies accountability. Accountability implies you're dealing with a peer and someone who has a standing. But Kate doesn't have a standing here. She's not a partner, she's a piece of cover, a procedural footprint that allows operations to say later that the federal law enforcement was present, though Matt doesn't speak in a language designed for her to comprehend, because comprehension would grant her agency. Reggie is the first one to finally explode. He is legally trained, which means that he reads the patterns faster. Isn't this CIA? Are we gonna get burned later? While Kate still wants to believe Matt is maybe some kind of DOD advisor, Reggie can already smell the institutional shadow. And then Alejandro finally verbalizes the actual objective. They're using the migrants to locate a smuggling tunnel, the one used by cartel boss Fausto. Matt adds the next layer. They're going to force Manuel Diaz to go to Faust, and that's why they're pulling people out of ICE custody. This is where the film reveals its operating grammar. It's provocation, stimulus, designed to induce an error. Not build a case to win court, but shake the board until enemy makes a move. In other words, not prosecution strategy, but covert action designed to escalate the conflict on terms the state can exploit. Matt then moves on a money laundering network. From Kate's perspective, a brief flicker of hope appears. Good, this is evidence. This can be a case, and this goes to indictment. But Matt draws a hard line. This won't be enough. When Kate tries to speak to the bank's point of contact, Matt tells not to enter the bank. Kate's anger makes sense. This is my investigation. I have to do this my way. Matt remains calm, almost as if he's already running a model in a language Kate doesn't have access to. Kate eventually goes to her FBI superiors and demand answers. The superiors say, "What do you want? What would you have done here?" "I want to follow some semblance of procedure. That's what I want, to build a prosecutable case." And the FBI superior says, "We prosecuted more felony drug cases in this region last year than 2 previous cases combined. Are you feeling that on the street? Are you getting the vibe that we are winning?" Kate says, "No. Putting one cartel lieutenant on trial changes nothing. So we'll provoke them into a major mistake and wipe the whole structure." And the key line, this isn't Matt going rogue. This is sanctioned. This is what elected leadership wants. That's the moment Kate truly understands the whole operation is. It's state unapproved violence against suspects. So where does that leave justice Kate believes in? If law is the moral architecture of the system, who is it actually built to protect and who is it designed to bypass? Kate can't breathe inside that contradiction, so she goes drinking. The bar sequence isn't too much interesting, so I'll skip a bit for a moment. Kate meets Ted, who turns out to be a corrupt Texan cop who purposely followed Kate to find out what she knows about the drug cartels. Luckily for Kate, Alejandro enters and saves her. Kate is nearly murdered by someone from the world she associates with lawful order, and she's saved by someone from extra-legal world she despises. She survives, but she's bound more tightly than before because survival becomes debt. Only after this does Matt's earlier warning, "I told you not to go into the bank," snaps into focus. When Kate accuses him of using her as bait, Matt counters that she made herself as bait. The audience realizes Matt has calculated Kate's behavior profile, her adherence to principles, her instincts to follow procedure, and how those principles can be exploited. He knows she'll act the right way, and he knows the right way will lead her straight into a trap. That's why Kate becomes the most tragic figure in the team. The person who believes most deeply in justice is the person most precisely weaponized by the operation. Alejandro then loads Ted into a car and interrogates him the same way he interrogates Guillermo. Matt doesn't intervene. He cracks joke from the passenger seat. "You know what's so good about being covered in blood? A few more hits won't make a damn difference." Ted eventually gives them everything. Names of bride cops, tunnel intel, every fragment he knows, on the condition that his daughter will be kept safe. By this point, the film has carried Kate through 2 layers of hell. First, physical reality on the ground, then the machinery that claims to respond to it. The most frightening part is that what gets authorized in response, what the state is willing to bless when fear becomes policy. Kate is now enclosed. Cartel pressure on one side, institutional force on the other. If she tries to pull away, hands like Ted can find her. If she stays, Bud and Alejandro keep digging her through operations that wear legitimacy while operating outside of it. The moment the tunnel location is confirmed, the film shifts into an operation built for night fighting. Matt's team consolidates what they pulled from Ted and what they extracted by the undocumented detainees, and they pinpoint a specific access point. From there, Delta Force is inserted, and Kate and Reggie are dragged along whether they belong there or not. At this stage, procedure isn't something Kate can lean on. Procedure gets absorbed into machinery. Nobody offers her a clean explanation because, again, the more anyone explains, the clearer the illegality becomes. Delta operators communicate by hand signals, keeping everything silent, and use blades to remove sentries without signal. Kate and Reggie walk through the tunnel in a dull green smear of night vision, feeling their way through the night uncertainty. Matt and the operators use thermal optics that make the space legible. That gap in visibility becomes a form of hierarchy. Power in this space belongs to people who can see. That is why the operator's line to Kate lands as something more than a crude joke. "Don't get in the way. Don't shoot any of us. Don't shoot one of us. Keep your safety on, muzzles down, and follow." That instruction translates into a blunt truth. You are cargo. Kate's inclusion was about paperwork, not utility, and the paperwork has no value once the operation starts. She ends up trapped inside a role where she is required as a symbol and resented as a body. Inside the tunnel, the firefight breaks out. Cartel men moving products get caught in the funnel, and Delta clear the space. In the middle of that, Kate catches something that feels more important than the shootout. Alejandro peels off. He moves with intent that doesn't match the team's flow. The stated purpose is to clear the tunnel. Alejandro moves as if the tunnel is only a passageway towards something else. Kate can't let that go because she has been living with the feeling that the real plan is being withheld from her. Alejandro's movement looks like the route to what's being hidden, so she shifts from this team and follows him. In that decision, she becomes isolated. She leaves Delta's protection, loses Reggie's line of sight, and exits Matt's control, and steps towards the truth alone. Outside the tunnel, on Mexican territory, Alejandro grabs Silvio and puts a gun on him. Silvio is a Mexican cop and a corrupt link to the cartel. To Kate, he is still a police officer, and they are still standing on Mexican soil. That fact tightens around her throat. Touching Silvio here can turn into an international disaster. Kate raises her pistol and tries to stop Alejandro. Alejandro doesn't hesitate. He shoots her twice in the torso armor. He warns her not to point a gun at him ever again. Kate hits the ground and learns at bone level what she is in this structure. At the same time, Matt's side treats the tunnel operation as a success. Reggie responds that Kate is gone, and the group turns back with reluctant urgency. Kate staggers out the tunnel, bloodied and furious, and throws a punch at Matt. It's her last remaining moral reflex, the instinct to react like a human being when language has stopped working. The response is immediate. Matt restrains her, Delta pins Reggie. Shh, just let it happen. Kate's defeat becomes official. The bullets were one kind of loss. The larger loss is confirmation that her agency is irrelevant here. Matt finally tells her the real objective. It is the film's core reveal. The goal was never to punish the cartel within the boundaries of law. The US understands it cannot eliminate the drug market, so it chooses management. It plans to remove the Sonora cartel because they are too volatile, then install a group that is easier to control so the flow becomes predictable again. Kate's idea of justice collapses under that logic. That explains everything at once. Why he withheld information, why he kept her close while keeping her excluded. She was needed as a face. Her understanding was never needed. Kate says she will report it. The story opens its final door by revealing Alejandro's story and showing how the operation's ugliness is supported not only by state rationale, but by personal obsession. Alejandro used to be a prosecutor in Juarez. The cartel took his wife, beheaded her, and killed his daughter by throwing her in a vat of acid. After that, Alejandro became something narrow into revenge. He can be hired, he can be pointed. If the CIA's goal aligned with his revenge, he will follow that line until the end is Fausto. The film has been planting ordinary life of Silvio and his son fragments along the way. Those scenes exist so that the audience can't treat the coming death as clean as removal of evil. These people have families, routines, laughter. The film keeps forcing these questions of kind of violence we are watching and what it means to be called justice. Alejandro uses Silvio to reach Fausto's house. He clears guards, kills Manuel to draw attention, slashes his throat, and forces him to keep driving. Then the famous dinner table. I actually wanted to watch this movie because I saw this scene about 5 times doom scrolling YouTube shorts. Anyway, Fausto's family is eating and the table becomes the movie's final courtroom. Fausto recognizes Alejandro and asks whether this will make his wife proud. Alejandro answers. He says it does. Fausto claims that it was never personal. Alejandro repeats the same answer. He says it does. Fausto asks him not to do it in front of his children. Alejandro proceeds anyway, speaking the tone with the man finishing his ritual, and then he kills Fausto's wife and children. He lets Fausto sit with terror for a moment, delaying the end and then finally finishing him off. The scene is designed to make the audience uneasy because it asks the question, were you cheering for this? Early on, the cartels hid bodies inside walls. Later, a revenge instrument backed by state power tears a family apart at the table. The logic of fear survives the change in actors. When it's over, Alejandro goes to Kate's motel. The final horror is not a weapon, it's a signature. He forces her out of the balcony, puts a pistol on her, and demands she signs a false statement. Kate cries and refuses. Alejandro touches her face as if offering comfort and keeps a gun under her chin. He tells her she would be committing suicide. He is teaching her the rule set of this world. If you tell the truth, you can disappear. If you disappear, the record can be rewritten. Kate signs, not because she lacks courage, but because she already seen how powerless she is. Alejandro tells her it's a land of the wolves. He tells her she isn't the one. He tells her to go back to a smaller city where the law still has teeth. It's framed like an advice, but delivered like a sentence. He disassembles her gun and scatters the pieces around the room, leaving her with a final lesson of hopelessness. Kate reassembles the weapon and aims at Alejandro from the balcony, but Alejandro doesn't run. He turns and looks at her. He tells her to shoot if her life isn't worth much. Kate can't pull the trigger. Killing Alejandro doesn't restore death. It doesn't undo the wall of bodies. It doesn't resurrect the officer killed by the IED. It doesn't stop Matt or the other people above him. The world won't change from one bullet. Kate lowers the gun. Lowering becomes a surrender. The law she trusted is too small against the scale of violence and the logic that authorized it. The film ends by us returning to Silvio's son. The boy waits without fully understanding why his father isn't coming back. He goes to school holding his mother's hand. He plays soccer. In the distance, gunshot cracks. He freezes for the beat, then goes back to the game. The cruelty isn't the normalcy. Violence is an environment. People die. People vanish. People sign paper and children keep playing. And the war doesn't conclude. It continues as background sound.